Assalamu alaikum and welcome to About Islam, an online platform presenting authentic mainstream Islam to the world. I am your host, Layla Poulos, educator, author, cultural critic, and anti racism advocate. Wow, it was an election week, not election day, but Joe Biden is the projected winner of the 2020 presidential election. There's some fighting going on, there's some other stuff going on, and I want to go and hash through all of this confusion and everything. So the person to join me to help me do that is Tariq El Amin, imam of Masjid Al-Taqwah and executive director of Bridging the Gap. Assalamu alaikum, Tariq. How are you doing?
Wa alaikum assalam. Sister Layla, it's good to be back.
Yeah, we've been missing you. We've
Right?
been missing you. We've been missing your perspective. You see, I got my nice setup and everything because I
Yeah,
learned from you.
you are ready to go.
This election,
Yes.
okay, there's some surprising things that's happened. I had anticipated that it might be tight. Back in 2016, I anticipated a two-term Trump. Like I just kind of
Mm,
set my mind for that because I
really?
figured I was blindsided as a voter about his not his nomination as the Republican candidate, and then his ultimate slaughtering at the polls of Hillary Clinton. Like he slammed her pretty hard at the polls. So I
What
just
do you
was
mean
like,
in the electoral college? Because she
yeah,
won the popular vote.
no, she won the popular vote, but there was enough. He got all those states turned red
Yeah, yes,
as
yes.
far as the electoral college.
Yeah.
All those states turn red. So when you look at the electoral map, okay, which is like you said, it indicates the electoral college, not necessarily each vote that was counted.
Right.
It was pretty red. You know, you had the usual what they call the parentheses,
Hmm.
the East Coast and the West Coast.
Yeah.
Okay. But those swing states, did she win a single swing state? I don't even remember.
I'm not
And
sure.
I don't think she did. I know she definitely won Pennsylvania. And
Right.
that's like the one that you need as a Democrat.
Right. Yeah. Got out of
And but this year, Biden, it was just surprising that things kept flipping back and forth for a little bit. And so Pennsylvania was blue, then it was red, then it was pink, then it was light blue, then it was a solid blue. Once Pennsylvania turned a solid blue, they were like, okay, he lost. Because, in when it comes to electoral college, there's certain states, those battleground states, right?
there.
Chicago, one of them.
No, Illinois has been reliably blue.
Illinois, and New York, right? So that was, I was like, I cast my vote still, and I just was like, oh well, he got New York. I already know that. That's it. But we had Michigan, right,
Yeah.
up for grabs, and then
Ohio.
Georgia was a surprise. I think they're still counting votes in Georgia, right?
Yep.
Because of the mail-in ballots. Now, how important were the mail-in ballots this year?
Tremendously important. You saw, I think it was Fulton and um, since I'm not a native of Georgia, I don't know all the counties, but just watching the coverage, you saw how the places where votes were still coming in, those counties were heavily populated, by African Americans, by Black folks, um, and that made all the difference, in the world.
Mm,
So that that couldn't have happened without without those communities, without Black folks in Georgia.
yeah, and I mean also in Pennsylvania. That's the
Oh
thing.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
Biden thanked Black people.
He should, and rightfully so, and rightfully so.
He thanked Black people because those cities, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, populations where there were concentrations of Black voters, a lot of them voted for him and flipped the states. I think that they're projecting that he will end up flipping Georgia
Yeah.
as well because of Atlanta and, like you said, the counties where it's a large concentration of Black people. And so it's like the Black vote really mattered. Okay, he got a lot of it, a lot of them, but he didn't get all of them, right?
No, he did not. He got enough, but and that's the funny thing, because we were engaging in so many online conversations with folks who, when they were talking about the difference between Biden and Trump, a lot of positive that it really was not a difference. right?
Mm,
And of course, that was coming from a very vested perspective, just talking about what it meant for Black folks, and not necessarily looking at what the difference was for that base that Trump had energized. I don't want to say I don't want to paint white folk as a monolith either, right? But for those white people who were receptive to his rhetoric, that supported his brand of leadership and just his brand, period.
mm,
Um, that's really a lot of times when I was arguing with folks or talking about it. That's what I was talking about. It was not necessarily about what it meant necessarily for Black people to have um, looking at the difference between Biden and Trump. It was really about what it meant for those people that he had energized and emboldened um, over these past 4 years.
mm.
And based off of that, the the threat of the harm, potential harm in another 4 years of Trump was vastly, mitigated by Biden election. So I looked at it from a different lens, not necessarily what it meant for me just as a African American, as a Black man, but what it meant for those people who would negate my humanity, who would scream law and order, who the same folks who were lynching Black folks, their predecessors, their ancestors. Um, that's that for that portion of his base that I was looking at. Like we need to get these people back in their hole.
Yeah, I think that, over the past few decades, post civil rights movement, that racism still very much exists in the society,
Absolutely.
but it did start to go underground a lot. I mean, the systems pretty much stayed the same,
Mhm.
but as far as the outward, blatant, dangerous, violent racism, Trump did kind of like scratch that back
Oh,
up to the surface. Like he kicked the sand and a whole lot of stuff and people came out because of it. And I think that one of the things that people seem to not appreciate a lot is that, coming from an African American perspective, you're talking about a system, a system and a presidency. Our first president owned our people, George
yeah,
Washington. Our
most
first
definitely.
president owned black people. Abraham Lincoln, he thought slavery was wrong, but he didn't think that black people belonged in America.
No.
That's why you have Liberia right now. And so there is no denying that racism, bias, discrimination, all those things exist despite party political alignment in the American presidency. So when you, as someone who has generationally been impacted by that reality,
Mhm.
you kind of you it can be something that you ignore, and then you look at other things. So I can definitely understand if an African American voter thinks along the lines of, yeah, they're both two racist white men anyway. At the end of the day, they're going to make those assumptions. Not saying that Trump is racist or Biden is racist. Trump is racist.
Yeah, he's raised.
But I'm saying, like, you could automatically make that assumption. You could automatically make the assumption that this candidate is not going to really care about the long-term historical oppression of black people and the issues that impact us continually. I mean, the police violence is an extension of slavery. We all know that.
Yeah.
So it's something that is a continual thing. And I think that, I'd mentioned that Barack Obama jaded a lot of black people even more, because he really grounded the reality that ultimately, yeah, it doesn't even matter if we're in the White House. I mean, Trayvon Martin, Eric Garner, Tamir Rice, uh, uh, Sandra
Bland.
Bland, and on and on and on. And it's just like, that was under an in the Obama administration. And so it's just a matter of, ultimately these things are still going to exist. So I may decide that I can look at Trump and like some of the other stuff that he says, and totally gloss over his blatant xenophobia, racism, sexism, and tribalism. I can do that, and I can look at other
Mm.
things, just like I could not. I can automatically delude myself into thinking that Joe Biden is somehow not as racist as Trump. I'm not saying that he is, but it's just like I could delude myself into thinking that and look at other things. So just like people can look at Biden and say, "Oh, we're going to vote for him because of this and this and that and that and that," and be black. People can do the same thing for Trump. I don't think that's appreciated enough.
You
You know.
know, I think that because of the historical context and the continuity of racism, we often have difficulty separating that, or I guess aligning it with behavior, right? Because racism as a cultural, as a societal norm, um, it was just here. It's been here,
Mm,
and that did not necessarily always um, align with cruelty or with neglect. It did not necessarily mean that there was an absence of empathy on some level, right? So like it's the whole idea of the beneficent slave master,
mm,
right? And we kind of say it tongue in cheek to a degree, but that was also a reality as well, where people felt that they had the right to own another human being, but they said, I'm gonna try to be as good as I can about it while I'm doing it,
mm,
right? Um, Still an abomination, right? But there are layers and there are different shades of how racism has manifested itself. But when we think about the um, the implications of, of simply thinking that the character of the man doesn't matter, or what a person says does not matter,
mm,
and we really lose sight of the power of the real power of the presidency. It's two things, right? You got power over the federal apparatus, and all of the governmental agencies, and really being the point for dictating policy, and we see much of a how much of a mess can come from that, how cruelty can find its way into it. We think about all of these migrants, these people coming here seeking asylum, and how they were treated like criminals, like not even human beings. And then we also think about how our president presents us to us, and also presents us to the world stage.
mm,
So the bully pulpit, that's probably the second thing. In some ways, it's probably the most important thing for us internally. And to have somebody that could be in that position and use that power to further divide us. And it's not even about, having this fantasy like, expectation that because an individual comes in, that racism no longer exists,
mm,
but at least to have somebody that will call us to our better selves, to say that, yeah, we have all this pain behind us, but we can be better. We can we can fix what we have what we've broken, and we can aspire to more.
mm.
And and Trump was absolutely not that. So if the only thing that separates him from Trump is that he is willing to give us a better narrative right now, to tell us
Mm,
that we can hope for better, that we can try to become act as one nation, that we can heal. Even if he's just willing to say those things, those words have power, and those words obligate us to try to reach for that, right? And that's really where we are right now.
yeah.
And all of these young people, these millennials, uh, especially these young white, which I'm so proud of them, because I'm proud of them because this is their inherited problem. Racism is not our problem. That's their inherited problem, and it's for them to solve.
Yeah.
It's for them to heal their families, and to use the levers of power that they have hold of, right? Um, and to give up, that privilege that is unearned and undeserved.
Yeah.
So I'm yeah, yeah. So all of that to say, it absolutely matters who was in that office. And
Mhm.
anybody and folks that try to gloss over the fact of what he says is just meaningless rhetoric. I
I
don't know.
I have to agree with you. I mean, even if you think along the lines of George Bush the second,
Yeah,
okay. I always forget what his middle initial is. I think his father's H, right?
yeah, and he's HW,
HW. Okay.
George W, George
George
W.
W. George W. So, he had his administration was not the most competent one
Mhm.
historically. I mean, there's been worse. Ulysses
Oh
S.
yeah,
Grant,
absolutely.
Andrew Johnson,
Yeah,
Andrew Jackson, the war criminal, just to name a
yes,
few.
yes, yep.
And but one of the things is that when one of the worst tragedies that happened to the dominant culture in the society, 9/11, okay, in the minds of the dominant culture, it's the worst thing to happen to them. It's not the worst thing to happen in American society. Okay,
Not
chattel
by a long
slavery,
shot.
Trail of Tears,
Yeah.
okay, Detroit,
Hmm.
uh, 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 the
Black Wall
water,
Street.
yeah, exactly. So, but when it happened under his administration,
Hmm.
and it would have been very easy for him to tear this country in two as far as the people, but he actually brought the people together in a lot of ways with his rhetoric. He did not divide the people further. He did not blanketly vilify Muslims. He actually defended them. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't do wrong things. His administration was dishonest
Yeah.
about a lot of stuff. But when it comes to being that leader during a time of crisis and disaster, he handled that part well, the human part of it well.
Hmm.
Okay, just like Barack Obama did too. Except, with Hurricane Katrina, again, that's an administration thing. His administration really messed up on that one.
Yeah.
But as far as his rhetoric as a leader connecting with his citizenry, okay, all of the citizens of the United States, I think he did that pretty well. He did a lot better job than Trump did. Trump
Absolutely.
never joined us together ever. It was just like he was always a wedge. He always presented a wedge between the American people that existed. It's like he pounded it further.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to pull it out, he pounded it and grounded it further and put his egomaniacal self on top of it. So I can definitely agree when it comes to that. I still think that people will overlook that. I think that people across demographics, because he had a rise in black voters. Okay, he had more black voters than in
Who,
past
Trump?
elections.
Trump
Yes,
did? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he had more Latino voters. So I think that there are people who look past all of that, and they decided that they were going to vote for him. It didn't work. Okay, apparently it did not work because we don't appreciate the fact that we automatically thought that everyone that voted for him were his MAGA red hat supporters. That they're the ones who voted him in office. They're not. They would have never gotten him in office. It's those people who they didn't like Hillary. They didn't. They were lukewarm on both of them.
Hmm.
And so, people who decided I'm just going to sit this one out. But after 4 years of Trump, decided, no, I'm going to hit that poll. I'm gonna mail in my vote. Know.
Yeah, we had more. There were over 100 million people, 100 million registered voters that did not show up at the polls in 2016.
Hmm.
Um, so that I think that was probably more telling about the state of um, just the political malaise that existed. People just were not invested. They were
You were
disenchanted.
tortured. A lot of
Yeah.
people. I felt tortured a lot of ways because I did not like Hillary Clinton as a candidate at all. I think that as a Democratic candidate, she's one of the ones I like the least
Mhm.
ever. And I'm a New Yorker, and she was a senator of New York,
Yeah.
and she was very much so. She tried to uh, put a band-aid on it, but she was very much so part of the criminalization of black people, black men. young
Yeah.
black men during her husband's administration. I hadn't forgotten about that either. So I was torn. It's just like, do you vote for this one or do you vote for that one? Now that happened in this election, but not at the same level. I don't think at the same level. I think that for a lot of people, Trump was so egregious
Hmm.
that it's just like, yeah, we've got to get him out. I think that in this election, people voted against Trump the same way that they voted for Barack Obama in 2008. What do you think?
I'm in 100% agreement on that. That it really was for a lot of people. It was like, and and I jokingly said this before Biden got the nomination. I said, I would vote for, a cardboard cutout, you know, a SpongeBob over Donald Trump. Right? It was like, at this point, based on who we have vying for the job, anybody but this guy. Because,
Yeah.
when you look at the history of fascist leaders, um, if you look at Mussolini, you look at Hitler, you look at, just dictators who have eroded any sense of democratic rule. They've done that. They've done that through their attacks on the press. Number one, and they've done that by marginalizing, picking out a group amongst the citizenry,
Mhm.
and turning them into they're the culprit. They're the reason that
Yeah.
that the majority of you don't have jobs, that you don't have opportunity. They are a drain on the economy. You know, these are the unwanted folks, and that's more dangerous to us where we are in our potential to actually kind of live into the promise. Even though they made a promise, they made a proclamation, they had no idea really what this would look like, centuries later. But we're holding them to that, right?
Yeah.
We're holding to that promise, about all of us being created equal. And Trump was taking us somewhere else. Um,
Yeah.
it's hard. Tell me this: how do people do they not see? But for any Trump supporter that you might know, do they
Oh, I
not
know
see?
some. I have some
Do,
in my family.
okay, so do they not see
Family.
just a lack of moral fiber? His lack of humanity. Do they not see that this is somebody that you wouldn't want? It just his business practices, his history of defrauding people. This dude has been bankrupt more times. Anyway, I
I
mean,
know.
how do people justify supporting this guy?
I posted in a tweet the other day. I said, "Listen, New York's been fighting this man for forever
Yeah,
because a lot of the stuff he did here in this state." And it was like he didn't carry New York. He's from New York. He was born in New York. Okay. He did a lot of his business dealings in New York and everything like that. And he never carried New York.
that says a lot.
He definitely has a long track record of uh opportunism
Mhm.
and moral bankruptcy. I mean, this is a vapid individual,
Yeah,
honestly. And like you said, he was very dangerous because he did not only like scrape up the racism, the blatant violent racism that exists in this country that puts so many people's lives in jeopardy. He also, you know, engaged in a lot of fascist tactics.
yeah.
Okay. And people died because of it. If you look at his handling of the COVID epidemic, pandemic, okay, it was horrible. He gave misinformation. He hired the only competent people that were a part of his task force. You had members of his task force just kind of looking at him like, yeah, no, I can't agree with that dude. I'm a doctor.
Right. Yeah, take my
Like you actually
license.
saw it in press conferences, them standing behind him, like, yeah, no, I can't. I took an oath. I
Right.
do that. I'm not going to turn into Joseph Mengele for you. I took it oath. So, but people do. They do. They've overlooked that over and over again. They've given him a pass. I don't really fully understand why. I can't understand that mindset, just like I can't understand the mindset of people who would blindly follow and want to vote for a candidate just because they're the Democratic
Yeah.
candidate. Like there are mindsets that exist in this country and in the world. You know, I can't stand the fact that people keep on saying, "Oh, this America, oh, the Americans." You know, looking at you, Canada. Okay, because you're going to act like they're not racist. Ask the Native Americans up there.
That's
And
true.
so,
Yeah.
you know, it's just like there are these mindsets that exist. Sometimes it's about maintaining the status quo.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you're part of, you know, even if you're a poor white person, there are certain socio privileges that you have in this society. Okay, and sometimes people just really want to hold on to that because they don't want to lose any of that because that's all that they have. I think we also don't appreciate the lateral bigotry and bias that exists in this country, where you have people of color biased against each other. You know, I think we don't understand how proximity to whiteness for people, certain demographics of people of color, how important that is to them. And I'm like, I think we don't appreciate what that really means to some people, because some people, their self-interest is based on economic strata. Some people, their self-interest is based on an issue that they find particularly important. So it's just like, are they really voting against their self-interest? You know, is it that they're ultimately voting against their self-interest? Because I used to think a lot of times I used to assert the fact that poor Republicans, it's like, what are you doing? Okay, poor right Republicans, because your party sticks it to you every single time.
Yeah.
Every single time you put an American president in the White House, a Republican American president in the White House, they automatically cut taxes for the rich. Okay, institute these policies that end up impacting poor people the worst. This country used to have a middle class. We
Yeah.
don't have a middle class anymore. There's no middle class. If you think about people who have college degrees, okay, they're part of the working class. Okay, a lot of times it's multiple incomes. Is first of all, it always has to be two family income now. That's what we're trapped in. And we also have a lot of people have multiple incomes. They have to work more than one job. Okay, that's not middle class. There's no disposable income or anything like that. All right, things that are that tight. So with the dwindling of these economic advantages that we have as American people, why are you voting these people into office? And Trump was a big fat demonstration of that, because that man just openly engaged in illegal practices.
Yes.
He put people that were not supposed to be on in his cabinet, his daughter, people with like they had the conflict of interest. What was it? Aren't you not supposed to earn money while you're an American president?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he earned a
That's
lot
the
of money.
emoluments clause. Yeah. The
And
emoluments
he
clause.
earned a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
But you
just
know
like,
what? I think it comes down to really defining our interests. And sometimes we
yeah.
don't realize that we're acting against our own interests because we've defined ourselves and we've defined the ideal scenarios that really aren't ideal. We don't realize that a lot of times until it's too late. And by that I mean, uh, I think the easiest and most observable um, uh, instance of this is poor white folks, um, and how they have been given, the psychological drug,
Mm,
of superiority
mm,
in place of any real tangible, benefits. And so this idea of exploitation, it lies at the root. Exploitation and division, it is lied at the root of this ruling class, their ability to maintain a hold for generation after generation, you know,
mm.
over people.
Is it that at the end of the day, it is more important to feel superior and to maintain the privileges with that false superiority that this country's racial structure provides. Is that Does that become more important? Does that become the ultimate self-interest, and that's the reason why someone like Trump can come along and win?
Well, I think it's a few things. I think even before getting to the interest, I think it is a justified skepticism or cynicism to some degree
Mm,
of the political process, of our elected officials, of their ability to actually um, enact legislation that is beneficial for us all.
mhm,
Um, so I think that that's part of it. And depending on where you're sitting at, um, your interests they look different. If you are a person whose family has been ravaged by mass incarceration, uh, by um, by police surveillance, by economic instability, substance abuse, your interests, what you want could seem to be really simple to somebody else, right? You just want to live free. You want a job. You want to be able to, live in peace. There's not a whole lot you're asking for. Black folks that are voting, that have voted for Trump at this point, um, there's a lot of anger, and rightfully so. I looked at those more as protest votes, to be honest.
okay,
Um,
that's fine. People can do that.
yeah, I mean, and
That's
you're
part of
entitled
the
to do so.
process.
Yeah, but how do things actually change? How do things change if you believe that someone who has done wrong is incapable of doing better? That's if they say they're going to do better. That's if they've owned up to what they've done wrong. And I'm not speaking specifically about Biden or anybody. I'm just saying in
Mhm.
general. There has to be some contrition, right?
Well, I
Uh,
mean, let's get to Biden. All
yeah,
right,
yeah.
because I think that one of the um wait for a second. I got it because I got it. I really have got to just a couple of seconds on Trump's response. It's just like this man ever been presidential at all?
Never,
At all.
never,
It's like, dude,
never. He is rocking in a corner somewhere, sucking his thumb. I
he
want my White House back. I want my White House back.
press conference before the Saturday. So it was
Yeah,
just before because Biden was declared the winner on Sunday.
yeah.
And that no, Sat it was Friday. He was declared the winner Saturday, right? I think that
Saturday.
was
Yeah,
what it was. So, but he was blaming everybody. He was calling every state out. He was calling every state a crook, and we know bad things happen in Philadelphia.
yeah,
He was rambling on and on and on and on. And this is like the presidential candidate. This is the president and the presidential candidate having a hissy fit
yeah.
to the world, to
He
the
has he
entire
has
world.
no dignity.
He
He
had
has
no
no
dignity.
class.
He had no dignity or class or anything like that. And I think Anderson Cooper put it the best. He was like a turtle on his back.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
He was a turtle on his back. So it was just like and that's one of the things because one thing that people are saying is this is not like this big the way the election results panned out wasn't this big disparaging of Trump. Okay. It wasn't a landslide victory. It was a pretty it's a pretty good victory. He won the popular vote and the electoral college. So there
Yeah,
you go.
he beat um he was beat by Biden in almost the same way. Actually, more emphatically than he beat Hillary Clinton.
I think, and I believe that his popular vote was higher than Obama's 2008 or 2000 or
Really?
2012. One of them. I believe that his popular vote was higher than Obama's. And
Whose Trump's was or Biden's was?
no, Biden's
Oh yeah.
popular
Well,
vote
Biden's. Yeah, yeah,
was higher than Obama's because this is like the American people that had enough of Trump. And so, but it's just like, why can't you just let that go? It's just like the people have spoken. Now, when the people were talking and you thought it was you, then it was just like, oh yeah, and this and that. But and count every vote. But I mean, you had people that were, yeah, and I think in Michigan, didn't they storm the headquarters, the polling headquarters, stop the
Yeah,
vote, stop the
they sure
count,
did.
stop the count, stop the
Yeah.
count.
Mhm.
You know, because those mail-in ballots came in.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
mail-in ballots came in, and it was just like, forget it. So it was just like, why can't you be presidential at this moment? I mean, even Nixon, who felt like he was robbed,
Yeah.
like Kennedy robbed him, didn't act this badly. Even Gore, who actually that was a tight race.
That was.
At first, I thought I was like in a 2000 type of scenario. I was like, wait a second, it's the next night, it's the next day. We going into the third day, and this feels like 2000. Is it going to come down to one state? Because it came down to Florida,
Mhm.
right? And I think they had a recount in Pennsylvania too in 2000. Pennsylvania is always funny acting. I love you, Pennsylvania. You know that. That's why I can talk.
I'm trying to make nice now.
Well, that's the Pennsylvania is like, it's like every so often it's just like Pennsylvania decides that it's that kid that decides that they just going to hang out all night and not tell you where they are. So that's the way Pennsylvania is when it comes to all the northeast states. Sometimes he's at home, Pennsylvania's at home chilling. Other times Pennsylvania went out somewhere with somebody. You don't know what Pennsylvania's doing. You don't know where Pennsylvania's going.
Right.
So I mean, but even Gordon, I mean, it went all the way up to the Supreme Court because that was a tight race. Even with all the recounts, I mean, Biden's lead is by like tens of thousands of votes. And if you do a recount, first of all, no presidential election has ever been won by a recount.
No, no. And they've
None.
already said it. I mean, I don't know if the standard is the same for all states, but I know quite a few I heard where the recount is automatic if it's within a half percentage.
Yeah, it
Uh,
has to be within a half percentage point.
right. But he's
And
beyond it.
some the voters have to ask for it.
Yeah.
There's some states where the voters ask for it. Candidates cannot ask for a recount.
Yeah.
Now, Biden, okay, I think that a lot of people are under the impression that voting, it, voting, we voted for, a lot of people voted for Biden because of who he is, who he was as a candidate. I don't think that's the case. I think a lot of people were voting against Trump, and they
Yeah.
just were really like, yeah, right now, Monkey is better than than Trump would be right now. So
But I'm not gonna lie. I was absolutely. I mean, I felt good listening to his acceptance speech.
oh no, yeah,
I
yeah,
felt. I mean, it felt so good to have somebody up there that was not talking absolute
yeah,
gibberish. You know, uh, that had some sense of the moment and the
yeah,
fragility of this nation.
yeah.
I mean, and
He
like I said,
wasn't Clinton and he wasn't Obama
no,
as
he's
far
not.
as the
He's not like
delivery.
a great orator
Yeah, he wasn't
or
Kennedy.
no,
He wasn't Reagan. I
no. But and
think
honestly,
more like Eisenhower or Lyndon B. Johnson along those lines. I think.
yeah, I honestly believe that you know it was kind of all these things coming together. Um, the Trump presidency made it possible for Biden to be president.
I have to be quite honest. As a Black person in America, I don't have a lot of optimism about a Biden administration,
Hmm.
a Biden Harris administration. I don't think that the fact that he has there's a woman of color vice president, that Obama already taught me that it doesn't matter. There's still power players.
Yeah,
He wouldn't have gotten there if she wasn't. Let's be honest.
that's right. She's
Okay.
from California. If she was in Utah, she would not have been considered.
Yeah.
Right? If
Yeah.
she was in
And it's
Michigan,
a
she would have been. She would not have been considered.
and I have other ideas too, but we have to talk about that not on this platform. And so it is like, I feel like I've mentioned before that there'll still be Black people dying in the street. We'll still have the need of the Black Muslim COVID coalition
Yes.
because the virus is starting to spread again and it's starting to mutate again as it gets colder and colder. Fortunately, it's been mild the last few days, but sooner or later winter is going to set in.
Right.
And so I don't have a lot of optimism about about a Biden administration. At the end of the day, I just feel like the my position as a black person in America, my kids' position, me having to worry about law enforcement and my children, all of that is still very much in place. Having to be concerned about uh, uh, soft Islamophobia, hard Islamophobia, having to still worry about my Muslim brothers and sisters who are not citizens, what's going to happen to them. I have to think about the fact that my children are less safe because of the color of their skin. I
Hey,
have to think about the
and
fact that that me and my children are less safe in how the houses of Allah, okay, because of the color of our skin. I have to think about the fact that as a covered Muslim woman, as an obvious Muslim woman, okay, there are certain dangers that I encounter, and there are also certain societal ramifications to my very existence. When I
yeah.
walk the street, when I enter a boardroom, when I enter a classroom, there are societal ramifications for that. So it's just like, yeah, okay, dude, can we deal with this, because this is a lot, there's a lot that we have to deal with as American people. Now it just we're about to change administrations in the middle of a pandemic. Okay, so that's the other thing too. This is like you have this global crisis that's going on, and the American people are outing their incumbent.
Well, based on his response,
you
we're
know
not missing much at all. We're not missing anything
but
at
I'm
all.
just saying, like, that's a grave thing.
I wanted to respond to a comment you made earlier, which was, about not necessarily having hope in Biden and Harris administration.
I don't.
Honestly, my hope is not in Biden uh, or Harris, not in their administration. My hope is in the people, and I think we have more reasons to be hopeful right now in one another than we've had in a long time. The quote unquote social unrest, that we have seen, as a result of, the uncovering or unveiling of systemic and structural racism, police violence. Uh, that response has been a multi-layered response. It's been a diverse response. It has been an intergenerational response. It's been people who have been sitting by and and ignored all of these things,
Mm,
for decades, and now feel a sense of awakening and responsibility. Um, I think the conversations that we're having right now on how to make systems better, how to better care for the environment, how to uh, leave this place better, or try to undo some of the damage that has been done, because we got children, we got grandchildren, we have generations that are going to come behind us. So that's where my hope is. My hope is in the people, and if the people are doing what the people need to do, what we need to do, then our leaders have no choice but to respond to that.
mm,
And a one-term presidency for Trump is a reminder. It's a reminder that morality matters, that character matters, that how you pull this nation together, it matters. And if you don't do the job, you are not guaranteed another term. So that's what I'm really hopeful. I'm hopeful about that. So hoping definitely in the law, but definitely
yeah.
in what I see in terms of the sentiment of the people.
And I think, yeah, I agree. And I can say that one thing that I'm hopeful about when it comes to a Biden administration
Yeah,
is that when the people, okay, call him to task,
yeah,
because you know they're gonna,
yeah. They will.
they're going
We
to.
probably will.
Black people gonna call him to task, Muslims gonna call him to task, black Muslims gonna call him to task, everyone's gonna call him to task.
Hmm.
And we're resisting these issues and everything like that. There is some comfort in the hope that our the next administration won't be part of the problem.
Inshallah. Yeah,
Inshallah. I think that that's the one thing I can say that I am hopeful for.
yeah,
I don't think that the a lot of the issues that impact black Muslims is going to go anywhere overnight. But I think that as we do what we've been doing, okay, for centuries in this country,
Yeah.
then at least this administration won't be the biggest hindrance to that.
Yeah.
And at least this administration hopefully will not turn turn their have deaf ears when it
Yeah.
comes to that. And the administration will address it with some empathy and professionalism and diplomacy.
Yeah.
So okay, now I feel a little better. Now I feel a little better. Thank you so much for joining me. I kind of talked your ear off.
No, it's been a pleasure.
Inshallah, may Allah make it easy for all of us as American people.
I mean,
I hope that, and may He make it so that we can continue to move the needle forward when it comes to making this a more egalitarian society where everyone has their humanity, no matter their race, their economics, their social background, or anything like that. So hopefully we can move the needle forward, inshallah. Jazakallah, Tariq. Thank you so much.
welcome, Layla.
Thank you for joining me at About Islam. Remember to hit that subscribe button and ring that bell if you want notifications for the next great Muslims I get to interview. Visit us at www.aboutislam.net. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. So check out what we got going on there, inshallah. Thank you again. Assalamu alaikum.